Hi, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics for our first program of the year, the impact of local newsroom closures on communities. It's so wonderful to see so many new faces as well as all of the returning ones tonight. If you don't know me, my name is Abby Clements, and I'm a senior at KU studying political science, digital marketing, communications, and history, and I have the honor of serving as the Student Advisory Board, or SAB as we like to call it here, coordinator this year. If you're not familiar, the Student Advisory Board, or SAB, is the official student group of the Dole Institute. We believe that politics is a place for people to connect across differences and party lines. Our members have access to many wonderful opportunities throughout the year, such as networking with our wonderful guests and volunteering at programs. And we have many exciting events coming up throughout the semester, which some of our student workers will come up here and share a little bit about tonight in just a few minutes. But our first meeting is going to be on September 9th at 5:30 right here in the Dole Institute. We're going to be discussing some upcoming opportunities as well as hosting an exclusive tour of the Dole Congressional Archives, which are right below us right now. So you won't want to miss that. And if you haven't already joined our GroupMe or are signed up for our newsletter, QR codes are going to be available at the check-in table back there. So you can go check that out before you leave tonight. Or you can talk to any of our student workers, which will have some name tags on them. So now, if you could please join me in welcoming our director, Audrey Coleman.
Thank you, Abby, for that warm welcome. Holy cow, you guys. I've been here at the Dole Institute for 13 years. I think this is one of the record largest Patio crowds we've ever had, so give yourselves a round of applause. The chairs are full. You've almost eaten us down to the bottom of the bins, but stay tuned. There's going to be Dole Whip at the end of the program, so if you're still a little hungry or didn't get quite as much as you wanted, it will make it worth your while in many ways, if also in food. So, as director of the Dole Institute, it's my pleasure to welcome you to, as Abby said, the first program of the fall 2025 semester. And congratulations on being here, Rock Chalk. I hope your semester's off to a wonderful start. Abby, for her part, she's our Student Advisory Board coordinator. As she said, she's been here an active SAB member for all 4 years of her journey here at KU, and we are excited to have her as a leader. She's grown so much, and she is completely emblematic of the kind of experiences and growth that you can experience when you become a part of the Dole Institute on our Student Advisory Board. Abby's put together a fantastic program for you tonight, and I can't wait for her to introduce her couple special guests here in just a few moments after these messages. So, folks, lots of familiar faces, lots of new faces. Raise your hand if this is your first visit to the Dole Institute. Great, lots, welcome. We're so glad you're here. If you're here, you're probably interested in politics, public service, leadership, civic engagement, and that's fantastic. This is absolutely a place you're going to want to come back to on your journey here at KU. We hope you'll make that your home. If you're only kind of tangentially interested in those kinds of things, you are going to discover a whole new world of way of thinking about your own field of study and the world around you. Definitely plan to come back. Our programs are always free. If you join the Student Advisory Board, there's a lot of food involved, spoiler alert, and we'll let some other folks elaborate on those opportunities here in a moment. Again, for the new folks, the Dole Institute is very special for many reasons, and for those of you who've been around, you know that we're founded on the legacy, the leadership legacy of U.S. Senator from Kansas, Bob Dole, one of the most influential leaders nationally, internationally of the last century. Senator Dole did pass away in 2021, so he's been gone for a while, but his legacy lives on. Here at the Institute, we use him as a model because he had a way of leadership, and particularly congressional leadership, that let him be a partisan. He was a Republican and a conservative at that, but he prioritized connection and collaboration with Democrats, with the other side of the aisle. So we know that he did that, and you all can do that too. It moves our country forward, and it's a way for us to be better together. So as Abby said, our vision here at the Institute is that politics and political conversations is an opportunity to connect across differences. We all know how well politics can divide. I mean, we've seen it, it's basically our whole life, but we do it differently, and we know that, that there are other ways of learning from each other, whether you're a strong partisan, whether you're a moderate, a nonpartisan, whether you don't like either one of the major parties, whether you have beliefs that, intersect with many different political parties, or you're just plain unaffiliated, there's a place for you here. So you've come to the right place. If that kind of thing is interesting to you, we've got a lot of good work to do here with a lot of good people in this room. I really hope you enjoy being here at the Dole Institute this evening. And now it is my pleasure to turn the mic over to our Senior Associate Director and longest serving member of the Kansas House of Representatives, Dr. Barbara Ballard. So help me welcome her.
Thank you very much, Audrey, to our director. Would you give her a round of applause? Come on, a little bit better than that. There you go. Thank you so very much. I'm delighted, as Audrey would say, with this crowd. And thank you so much, because there's lots of things you can do, but when the food is free, you come. If the food is good, you may come back. And the other thing is, know that this is a place you can always come and know that you are welcome. And that's extremely important. One of the things that I do, sometimes I do summer orientation, and one of the things I say, if you feel that you belong in a place, if you feel people want you to be here, if you feel you have made connections with some people, then you want to be here. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel as if you belong, you leave. We don't want you to leave. We want you to not only stay here, but get involved. And part of being involved, I'm sure in high school you were involved in all kinds of things. If you weren't, this is your opportunity to now be involved in all those things and know that you can make a difference. Not only that, we fit in a different category. You take classes, that's where you get your credits, that's what's going to earn you your degree. But we're also important in that you can learn outside of the classroom. You can participate. You can do internships, you can volunteer, you can make a difference on this campus. And we want you to not only be in the classroom doing well, but also outside of the classroom doing well. If you interview for scholarships or jobs, they're going to want to know, what else did you do in college? You can say, I was a member of the Dole Student Advisory Board. And they'll say, and what did that entail? Tell them all the things you did. You met all these people. You introduced them. You welcomed them here. You got to know. You heard them speak. So we provide those opportunities for you. In our mission statement, we talk about civic engagement. That's what I'm responsible for: civic engagement, leadership, public service. All of those things connect. They're not just one important, more, less. And we want you to do that as well. So 3 things I want you to remember. You can serve in any capacity you would like to. Also, you can lead. You were leading probably in high school. You may be a little shy. You can be shy and still be a leader. Get involved. You come to the Dole Institute, you meet all of these different people from all kinds of disciplines. That makes you want to belong. We're providing that opportunity for you. And most of all, something that a former Chancellor, Hemingway, who actually was instrumental in getting the Dole Institute of Politics built on this campus. He says you can make a difference. And when you make a difference, it affects so many other people's lives. So please keep that in mind. And I want you to just repeat after me, and then I'm going to let our program begin. Number 1, say the word, I can serve. Is that the best you can do? Say, I can serve. I can lead. I can get involved. And I can make a difference. That's what Jayhawks do. Oh, you're following directions. Now, this way, I want you to say it, repeat it, and I want to hear it. I want people up on Daisy Hill to hear you, okay? Say, I can serve. I can serve. I can lead. I can lead. I can get involved. I can make a difference. And the Dole Institute will help me do all those things. Jayhawks make a difference. They do what? Who makes a difference? There you go. You were listening. Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you AJ, and she's going to be the coordinator of Pizza and Politics, and she's going to tell you all about it. There's more food involved.
Thank you, Barbara. So, hello, thank you guys so much for coming. My name is AJ Mosier. I'm a junior here at KU, and this year I'll be serving as the Pizza and Politics coordinator. Of all the programs that the Dole Institute puts on, Pizza and Politics is our most informal one, as the name might appear to you. The way that Pizza and Politics works is once a month, so we'll have one in September, October, November. There will be a Friday where I will be inviting in someone over the lunch hour, and we will be having a discussion with an expert in a certain field. This might be about the Kansas Supreme Court. It might be about more media-centered topics. But basically, this is a time for KU students to come in, congregate, and listen to a local expert while we get to eat some really good pizza. I would love to see you guys there. Our first one is going to be on September 19th. If you want to keep updated with the topic, things like that, go subscribe to our newsletter and go follow us on Instagram. Next, I have Jacob McCarty coming up here.
Hey everyone, like she said, my name is Jacob McCarty. This is my second year as the discussion coordinator here at the Dole Institute, and I am so honored to be one of the employees here. But I have a couple different series to talk about with you here. I'm gonna try and do it nice and quick. So our first one is with Joni Wickham. She is the former chief of staff to Kansas City Mayor Sly James, and she has been named one of the 50 most powerful people in KC, and is also a best-selling author. She's going to have a 5-part series, which you can see on the back of your handouts that you guys should have got all the way back there. And it's under discussion groups, and it has all the dates on there. So if you're wondering what time they'll be at 4 o'clock. There will be snacks, because we have to have food, so you can plan on that. And as well, I have a second series. This series is a more conversational series, so it really relies on your input to it. And it's going to be with 2 moderators, Paul Davis and Jeff King. Paul Davis is a former member of the House of Representatives and has been a candidate for Kansas governor and United States Congress. He is currently a practicing attorney in governmental consulting business. Jeff King is a former state house and Senate member for over a decade. He is currently the vice president and chief operating officer of the Dole Institute. Our goal here is to have civil discussions in a respectful environment where all views, as long as not inflammatory, can be freely expressed and be given space. This is a 3-part series on Mondays at 5:30 on September 15th, 22nd, and 29th. There will be more put out that, so make sure you follow in our SAB GroupMe and on our newsletter. There will be dinner provided since it is at 5:30, so you can expect more food from these programs. But I really look forward to all of you coming out to them, and I hope you guys have a great year. And I'm going to pass it off to Abby.
Yeah, so thank you everybody tonight. Thank you to our student workers for talking about some of the SAB events that we're gonna have throughout the semester. I'm really excited to get started. So thank you all for attending our first SAB event of the semester to learn more about local newsroom closures and the effects that can have on community and society. We're really fortunate to have 2 wonderful guests here today to share some of their expertise in journalism and some of their stories with you all. So can we give them a warm welcome for tonight? Okay, thank you. I'd like to start out today by just talking a little bit about both of your backgrounds in journalism. So Eric, could you start us off by sharing some of your motivations for going into journalism?
I absolutely was certain I was not going to go into journalism. I came here to KU, and actually I'm a 3rd generation in the business. And my father and my grandmother, which is kind of unusual, but they insisted I should not go into journalism. And I was not going to go into journalism. I was going to go get a law degree until I figured out that lawyers are just basically salespeople for their services. And I was going to get that in an MBA, and I thought, oh, this is a wonderful thing. And then I started working on the Kansan part-time, and I loved it too much so that I had to stay and continue on in journalism. From there, I worked for about 20 years, mostly at the Milwaukee Journal. If you ever saw the movie War Games, one of the things I covered there was a computer hacker's case that inspired that movie somewhat. Then I went to teach for a couple of decades at the University of Illinois, and I decided to retire. And I retired to go back to my hometown here in Kansas and edit and publish a newspaper that I had helped purchase with my parents who had worked there for many years, 25 years earlier, so that it would not be chain-owned. And I wanted to do something that I said I'd been doing in class. I'd been telling all my students, all this crap about, we need to have a social media presence, we need to have video, we need to have this, we need to have all these different technology things. I said, no, what you need to have is good journalism. And if you have good journalism, people will still read newspapers. It wasn't about technology killing journalism. It was about the fact that it was boring to most people. It wasn't really talking about real issues, and a lot of it was in technology. I said, I'm going to prove this. I may not be able to, I can't buy the New York Times, but I can buy the Marion County Record. And so I tried to go out and do that and tried to do hard-hitting journalism. And sure enough, our circulation went up, our ad revenue went up, we were doing fine, and we were challenging people and challenging local authorities, and of course they raided our newsroom. So that brought even more attention to us, but we've been existing since then. We still publish things, we still, there's a meeting going on right now that I've got a reporter sitting at that the mayor's mad at us about. We're going to tell the truth about it when it gets out. So I'll be editing that after I'm done here tonight. But it's fun. And this is my retirement gig. I don't even take money for doing this. I do this for fun. So it is fun. It really is, because if you look around and you see what's wrong with our society right now, getting people engaged and having them engaged in talking about actual facts, which is we put the facts in, you guys have to help with the engagement aspect of this, get people engaged in it, will lead to our democracy being healthy. If we don't have that, our democracy is not healthy.
Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing a little bit about that. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your background, Emily?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a suburb of Wichita. Anybody from Wichita here? Woohoo, yay. Read the paper every morning, but I did not desire to go into journalism either when I was younger. I actually went to college and had planned to be a high school history teacher. So, and I loved it, got my degree in history. I interned for the Kansas Secretary of State at the time, Ron Thornburg, and after college, I thought I wanted to go to law school. Eric, I've worked with you a long time. I had no idea that we were two failed lawyers. I went to law school for a month and quit on my birthday. It was the best birthday present I ever gave myself. No offense to any lawyers, but it just was not for me. But I went back and I worked for Ron Thornburg for the next 2 years, and then the Kansas Press Association came calling in 2002. Kansas Press Association is one of the oldest associations in Kansas, and we're the association for both print and online publications. And so we were key in the formation of the state. We have numerous governors that came from the ranks, and so I'm very proud of the role that the Kansas Press Association has had. So I came there in 2002 as the education director. I led an initiative called Kids Voting Kansas that taught kids about civic engagement, loved it. Worked my way up, and in 2018, I became the first female director of the Kansas Press Association. If you stay somewhere long enough, they'll be like, you can do that too. So I moved into that role and have been doing that ever since. We do a lot of work, not only for our publications, but also for the general public when it comes to transparency. So we truly believe that not only are we advocates for our newspapers, but we try to improve transparency law as much as possible. So sometimes, as you can imagine, some people at the State House want to duck into corners whenever I come around, but it's a really good job, and it's one that I truly believe in, and it's a true honor to work for the people that are in the field like Eric doing the job every day, because as he said, democracy does not work without good journalism.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. I'd like to talk a little bit about the function of local newsrooms and their communities, especially in like local and smaller communities. Eric, could you talk a little bit about some of the primary topics that local journalists often cover?
You know, it's changed over the years. There was a time when community journalism meant being the Chamber of Commerce's mouthpiece. Everything is great in our town. Isn't it wonderful? We have this great festival. We have this great whatever. Come join us in town. Well, to an extent, a lot of that was siphoned off through social media and other places. What I have found, and this is both as a publisher and as a researcher before that, teaching journalism, is that what people are interested in, what they'll buy a newspaper for, is something that's surprising. You know, this is not really groundbreaking stuff here. I mean, there's a reason they call it news. It's new. And so new news sells to people. People care about things that are unexpected. So what you want to do is find things that are unexpected that are contributing to the welfare of the community, and be the voice of the people who aren't being heard. Most communities are dominated by small groups of people who speak louder than everybody else. And there's a lot of people out there who are afraid or don't have the clout, or for one reason or another, they just don't want to do it. Some of them just don't want to do it because they don't want to get involved. But we need to speak up for them and let their voice be heard by other people. Not only is democracy someplace that requires that you listen to other people, it requires that you also speak, and speak honestly about what you think, so that those views can be exchanged. And that's what we try to do. So we cover government affairs, we cover community affairs, we make people think about dumb issues like most of these little small towns around Kansas own their electric utility. They sell electric rates to the cities. They very often price themselves way up in the market. They make a big profit on electric so that they can reduce property taxes. Well, an electric tax actually hits people harder than the property tax does. If you think about it, the poorest people, they don't have energy efficient appliances. They don't have hyper insulated houses. They've probably got more kids, more washers and dryers, more whatever going on. So they're paying a greater percentage of their income in a utility tax that is designed to lower a property tax, both of which can hit people wrongly. Just bringing that out, trying to get people to understand it. And I understand, you know, it's politics and it's numbers, and that means, but we try to find human faces to put on the stories. That's what journalists try to do, so that people will recognize it. And we hope we do that, and if we do, we might move the needle. I don't know which way we move it. I mean, this is one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about journalists that aren't journalists, is we don't care what you do with the information we provide, as long as you have the information. If you may make a decision that is completely contrary to what I would make, but if it's based on facts, it's based on truth, that's fine. You know, you'll come around at some point probably to my idea. My idea is screwy. But it's people that make decisions based on things that are other than fact that worries us, and that's what journalists try to give us, the facts out there. People think of journalists not that way anymore, because they think that those idiots that are on late night TV yelling at each other are journalists. They aren't. They are not. They are showmen, they are pitchmen, they are hucksters, they're spinmeisters. They aren't journalists. They may call themselves that, they aren't. A true journalist doesn't believe in hammering ideas home to make people believe something. So we try not to do that, even when it's supporting the local community.
Good. Did you have anything to add to that, Emily?
From the 1,000-foot view in Kansas, we have been very lucky in the fact that, you know, you hear about news deserts, right? And Kansas has been very lucky in the fact that we only have one area that's considered a news desert. And it is the only county in the state without a newspaper, but it's one of the least populated in the state. It's the very southeast part of Kansas, and it's covered very well by its sister paper. There are states in this country that have 20, 30 counties without a local publication. We know what happens in a community when you lose that cornerstone. Fewer people run for mayor. The cost of bonds goes up an average of 11 basis points. It costs the taxpayers money because I don't know about you, but I don't have time to go sit at a city council meeting, right? Or at a school board meeting. And so like Eric said, these things may be boring, but they affect your life every single day. And when you aggregate those amount of counties that don't have a local publication, can you imagine the things that are happening that no one is there to say, that's not right? And that affects me, and that affects all of us, really, right? And so we have done as an industry, and I tell my members this all the time, we have done a terrible job of telling our story. We tell everyone else's story so well. But people have forgotten that we're a local business who produces a product for the common good, right? We don't do this for the money, like Eric said. We definitely don't. And for those of you going into journalism, you have it in your veins. It's something you cannot get rid of. When I got bit by the journalism bug, I don't know if I will ever be able to do anything else because I believe in what we do. And like Eric said, the average American does not have the time or the bandwidth, right? When you're talking about low income or even middle income right now, you're talking about someone who has 2 or 3 jobs. Do you think they have time to go to these meetings and find out what is happening in their communities? Why are their grocery store, costs going up? They need somewhere to go. And when you don't have somewhere to go, a trusted news source, what happens? You guys know what happens. You guys are smarter about social media than even my generation, right? I talk to my kids and I'm like, where'd you get that news source? And they're like, I definitely didn't get it from Facebook because nobody can believe anything on Facebook, right? You guys go directly to the source because you guys know the things that are being put out and how to find true information, right? And so we need those places, those trusted places to go. And we do research all the time that talks about the most trusted. And while trust in media is at the lowest it has ever been, and we could have a whole program probably on why that is, local publications retain the trust of their readers. They may not like what is being put on the editorial page, but they can respect that publisher that is sitting at the wrestling meet covering their child, that is sitting at the baseball game talking about their schools and being a cheerleader for the schools, right? So when we talk about that, when I hear all the time of, the media, when I drill down and I say, what about the Iowa Register, which is a newspaper in Kansas? What about the Iowa? Well, I didn't mean Tim, who's the managing editor. He's my friend. He does such a great job. So sometimes when people think of the media, they think of the talking heads, right, that we talk about. But when you drill down and you say, what about your local publications? There's a respect there. There is a trust there. They may not agree with the editorial page, but they agree with the role in the community. And we know what happens when we lose that. And we have to start understanding that there is a huge gap that occurs in a community when a publication is lost.
And sometimes we don't even agree with our editorial.
And we do, absolutely.
Sometimes I write editorials all the time. Sometimes I write editorials that I don't agree with.
Right.
But it's designed to make somebody think.
Yeah.
But the one thing we deal with, and most of the papers that Emily's talking about deal with, we are hyper-local. Mm-hmm. We aren't going to write about anything. Nothing will appear in the Marion County Record if it doesn't happen in Marion County. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go beyond the edges of Marion County because we aren't experts in things beyond the edges of Marion County. And I think that's one of the things when people get in trouble is if somebody sitting in Marion County decides, I'm going to write about Vladimir Putin. Well, what do you know about Vladimir Putin? What do you know about Gaza? What do you know about something or other else? But we can be experts in what goes on in our own communities. And also in a small community, you have a human factor. Yeah. You're writing about somebody and you go to dinner that night and they're sitting at the table next to you. Mm-hmm. And if you get it wrong, you're going to hear about it. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to hold your head up in that sort of environment and treat them with respect and dignity, which doesn't always happen in bigger media operations.
Absolutely. Proximity breeds empathy, right? And so decisions are a lot different when you're in Stockton than if in Kansas City. No better, no worse, but they're a lot different when you run into those people. And so, it's a real, when we talk about the media too, I hear all the time of, oh, the liberal media. My membership extends way across the political spectrum, right? And so when we talk about editorial pages, in fact, one of my favorite stories is we honored an editorial writer from Southwest Kansas, and he's an owner, and he's beloved by his community. And so when we went out west to do an interview before we gave him the award, we asked the local coffee shop group, we said, what do you think of him? And he's a blue guy in a big red county. And they said, we love him. We just don't read the editorial page. Right? So again, it's that healthy tension. And I often talk about that healthy tension. Good public servants understand they may not like what they see in the paper. They may not like how it was presented, but they also know what happens when it goes away. And so that has always been a healthy tension that is essential for our democracy. We just have to make sure we don't lose that.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit about one of the biggest problems facing local news right now is those newsrooms closing. So I just want to share a little statistic about that, or fact, that since 2005, over 3,200 print newspapers have closed, and according to a 2024 report from Northwestern, newspapers are disappearing at a rate of more than 2 per week. So would you like to start us off by talking a little bit about some of the factors that may be contributing to these newsrooms closing?
Absolutely, yeah. I was just mentioning to a KU class last week that I have more papers for sale than I've ever had in my entire career at the Kansas Press Association. And it is not that the papers are not making money. They are making money. I just can't get anyone to buy them. These are very rural communities that support their paper. But when I approach someone who was going to move to a rural community, that's a heavy lift, and I completely understand that, especially for a young person, right? I grew up in a suburb of Wichita, which means large community, and 15 years later, I moved to a community of 500 people. It was a real culture shock, so I get it, right? And I had a family behind me, so that's good. I had that support system. I can't imagine saying, okay, I want you to go out to Colby, if you've grown up in a big metro area, so I get that. But one thing I tell students is I say, if you go to a community paper, you are not just going to be the crime reporter. You're going to be the everything reporter. You are going to get more experience than you would get being just kind of in this silo of an education reporter. There are so many opportunities out there. So right now, it's an aging industry. We have people going into the industry, which I'm so excited about. Your generation is going to save us in so many ways. But I think that getting someone to move there, so I have a very aging industry. And we have been the worst storytellers, as I said, about our story. And we just perpetuate this, oh, we're dying, kind of like that stuff, right? So sometimes I have a problem with Medill. It's kind of like one of those things like, oh, we're dying. Yes, the facts are, yes, we are, I get that. But there are also opportunities in journalism. What I have found, especially young people, you guys want to make a difference. And you can really make a difference in some of these smallest communities. And so these papers are making money. I just need people to realize that there are good opportunities west of Topeka.
It's changing how we're making money. It's actually,
Yep.
It used to be this was all about advertising.
Sure.
Now it's more about circulation. People will pay for good quality content.
Yep.
And so the percentage of income that's paid by circulation is rising. One of the problems that very small community newspapers face is the loss of local independently owned businesses. So you get a big chain store comes into town, and the person in charge of the chain store is somewhere hundreds of miles away. They're not going to advertise. It also hurts the communities. One of the reasons why there's a brain drain out of very small communities is there isn't as much opportunity for advancement for people within the community. If you compare it, it's very similar to what happened in the 50s and 60s to the central cities. Where a lot of business came in and left, and the opportunities left, and there was a lot of flight from the communities. It's stupid because these small towns are safer. They have, by and large, better schools. They have, you aren't having to worry about a lot of the problems that you were at. Yes, you might have to find out that, after 11 o'clock at night, there is no place that you can buy anything. You want to eat dinner at a restaurant, you better get there before 7 or 8 because it's going to be closed. And if you want to go to McDonald's, you better be prepared to drive an hour and a half because it may be that far away, which may be a good thing. So it is a different thing. But I just had a person who came to work for me in Marion who graduated from the University of Chicago, not in journalism, who lives in Lower Manhattan in Tribeca in a $25.5 million condo, by the way, who lived for the past year in Marion, Kansas. And he liked it. Now, he wanted to go back to New York. His friends are all there, and there aren't a lot of young people in town. But one of the things that's really useful, I can tell you as somebody who went to a major metro paper in Milwaukee, became an editor there, putting yourself in an environment that's unfamiliar to you, going to a town that you've never heard of, I'm going to go to Kalispell, Montana, I've never been there, I've never stepped foot in Montana. You're going to learn about it. You're going to become a much better journalist and really better person. One of the nice things about small towns is small towns are, although they have their cliques of leadership, they're too small to have class society. I mean, everybody deals with everybody else in a small town. You don't deal with just the highfalutin people or the poor people or the whatever else. You're all the same people. You all put your pants on the same way. You all go to the same food store. You all do this, everything together. And if you don't get along with them, you've lost something. And learning how to get along with people who come from a dissimilar background to yours is really an important skill. It's a vital skill if you're going to be a journalist. Even if you plan to go work in London or New York or wherever else it is, the experience you have coming from a small town really helps. There are people who this is such an old reference now to McNeil Lehrer, Jim Lehrer from McNeil Lehrer on PBS. He grew up in Marion, Kansas. That's where he came from. If you've gone to Hoke Auditoria over here, the name of the company that owns my paper that I own is Hoke Publishing. It's E.W. Hoke, who was the governor and named the auditorium after. Newspaper people were very prominent in politics.
Very much, yep.
And one of the reasons that they was because they could see across this chasm of people. They didn't just see people who were like them. And the biggest challenge we have right now, I call it anti-social media, not social media, is the cocooning of social media, that you only talk to people that you have talked to for the rest of your life. I used to do this when I was teaching at Illinois. I said, okay, all of you, because everybody at the University of Illinois is from Chicago, just like everybody in this room is probably from Kansas City, with a few exceptions. I said, how many of you today, and I was dealing with seniors and grad students, how many of you today talked to somebody that you went to grade school with? Everybody with their hands up. That isn't healthy. Talk to other people. Talk to people that you didn't go to grade school with. You might actually learn something, and society might get better because of it.
Yeah. Well, both of you kind of mentioned earlier about how local news, local newsrooms are able to retain a lot more trust with their communities and the people that they're reporting on compared to a lot of the bigger news media. But despite that, have you witnessed any more skepticism with your reporting, amidst this less trust in news media?
But this is typical of the whole media. After police raided our newsroom, which created all sorts of commotion nationwide, I was on all sorts of shows, and I was even on the Dan Lebitard show on ESPN, if you can figure out why, I don't know. He had me do a balloon with helium in it, so it's strange. But while this was happening, we had our office there were about 25 people in our office, reporters. The Washington Post was there, New York Times was there, Radio Free,
Voice of America.
Voice of America was there, all sorts of people. And one of the things I said was, I asked the people as we started a press conference, how many of you have ever been accused of fake news? Every hand went up. How many of you have been accused of negativity? Every hand went up. Yes, we're going to be accused of those things all the time by people who don't know whether it's fake or not, who have read something on social media that says that, I won't even say what it'll say because that'd be political. Some stupid, inane thing that happens on social media that we have to worry about, and they insist that it's true. There will always be that. But there's also the sense of trust. After we were raided, a lot of people subscribed to the paper. In fact, I've talked to some people tonight here who did. Marion, Kansas is the 122nd largest town in the state of Kansas. We're the Marion County Record. Marion County is the 57th largest county in the state of Kansas. Within a month after the raid, we had the 8th largest print circulation of any newspaper in the state of Kansas, just by people volunteering to come back and talk to us. And even they don't live in the community. We've got letter writers now who are on they've renewed their paper. They live in, Washington State or Maine. And they're writing letters to the editor. We have an issue now about people who are damaging docks on a lake. They're writing letters to the editor about the people who damage docks on the lake. I mean, it's a purely local issue, and they're writing about it. Had somebody who wanted to buy a pickup truck for the city electricians department to do, and this guy writes a long letter about how they should write electronic trucks because he ran some sort of operation in Southern California that dealt with trucks that utility workers use. And the comment we get from a lot of times is, we used to have this local newspaper and we loved reading it. We don't have it anymore. It may still exist, but it isn't really itself anymore. And we miss it. So we're adopting your community as our hometown, even though we don't live there. We've never lived there and we'll never be there. But there's a hunger for that. People want to get involved. And we can give them that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I think what the Marion County Record raid showed, because in the aftermath, part of my role in it was getting the word out, right, after it happened. And I got a call, it happened on a Friday, got a call from a publisher early Saturday morning. And he was way out west. And he said, Emily, I don't think the message is getting through. And I said, well, can you tell me more? And he said, I went to the coffee shop and everyone was saying the only reason this is getting attention is because it happened to a journalist. And I've learned very quickly that the narrative that I had to get out there had to shift. And it had to shift because the public was not understanding the threat that it posed to them. And so the narrative quickly shifted to, there was a way to get this information from Eric. There was a legal process to get the information that the police chief wanted. They completely ignored that law, and multiple people, the checks and balances on that system failed, which resulted in the raid. So what I started telling members of the public, especially when I spoke to them and spoke to groups, was this. I believe that we all agree that government overreach is a problem. I believe that we all agree that following the law is something that binds us. So it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you are on, but if you believe in limiting government overreach and holding the powerful to account, you should have a problem with this. You should have a problem with the raid. This is not a red-blue issue. Everyone should get behind what happened here and make sure it doesn't happen again. Because we have seen it happen in little ways for other journalists in other states on a lesser scale, but those personal rights are being chipped away at. And so while it happened to a newspaper here in Kansas, it could very well be your hometown next. And so that's why this needs to not be a partisan issue. This is actually all of us rallying around something that we all agree on, whether it's the right or the left or the center.
And it most definitely was not greeted by the public that way.
No.
We've received tens of thousands of supporting emails and letters. We have not received one negative one. But I recall going through the letters at one point, and literally this happened. So sorry for what happened to you. It must have been those damn Democrats. Click the next button. So sorry for what happened to you. It must have been those damn Republicans. We got roughly equal numbers from both sides of the political spectrum. And interestingly enough, the overwhelming disrepresentative group that wrote to us were people from law enforcement who really understood that this was a failure of a judge who didn't read a search warrant application, a prosecutor who didn't want to have to talk to it, even a police officer who was trying to impress his boss and understood that what we had was, there was nothing wrong with having, it was legally obtainable, but he left that all out of his report because it didn't fit what the narrative wanted it to be. So it's really the upshot of the social media cocooning, where you have a message that comes in and just ignores everything that doesn't fit that mold, and see what happens when it's weaponized in the justice system.
So we learned very quickly that we needed to work with groups, so Media Bar Law Committee. You wouldn't believe the amount of journalists that are attorneys, shockingly. And so working with judges in the aftermath of educating them about the Privacy Protection Act and the Kansas Shield Law. And so, you know, working and moving forward with pulling groups together, pulling them in and educating them. Because I think we would all agree that a lot of people had a lot of egg on their face that they would prefer not have after that raid.
Yeah, and you guys have talked a lot about some of the various problems that are facing journalism, media today, legal, and just kind of as a society. But I'd like to talk about some of the things that some maybe future journalists in this room could do, and then anybody else, just like when considering their news consumption. So what would you say that journalists can do to like increase trust in news media and stuff like that?
Transparency. Transparency on both sides. Transparency among journalists.
Yep.
Transparency among officials. Transparency among, you know, good things grow in light, in sunshine. Bad things grow in the dark. And the more that you can be open and honest and say, this is what happened. Maybe it wasn't perfect the way, you know, maybe I made a mistake. I mean, one of the things that we do as a ritual, it makes some of my reporters mad. We run a correction on anything that we get wrong, even if it's the most stupid, minor, trivial thing. Now, some people look at it and say, well, you make mistakes all the time. No, we admit mistakes all the time. Everybody makes mistakes all the time. Just some people admit them. And we try to admit the mistakes. We try to expose things that, you know, why do we think this way? A lot of our editorials are not about why condemning somebody or pointing with pride, but sometimes explaining why we chose to cover the story the way we covered the story, so that people will understand that and know that there was some thought process that went to it. They might agree with it, they might not agree with it, but the more you're open and honest with people, I mean, even if it's wrong, I'd rather go out being honest and true to myself than go out being a liar.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I go to the State House and I lobby on behalf of transparency issues, I tell public servants, I said, listen, transparency protects the good public servant as much as it protects the public, right? They may not agree with your decision. They may not agree with how you got there, but they can understand how you got there, right? They can understand the thought process. They can understand that. So I tell my journalists the same thing, and I tell my members all the time, like, I don't defend bad actors in government. I will not defend bad actors in my own association, right? Do good work. And like Eric said, we have gotten to a point sometimes in society where we hate to admit when we made a mistake. But listen, we all make mistakes. It's a human business, right? We're humans doing the work. And we can make mistakes. You lose trust when you don't admit those mistakes. And like Eric said, a lot of people don't understand. If you're not immersed in the journalism world, you don't know how stories are selected, right? You don't know, and also, you know, you don't know the editor's thought process. If a change is made that the writer maybe doesn't necessarily agree with, explain it to your readers. They're smarter than we give them credit for, right? So that transparency, like it protects the good public servant, it protects the good journalist too. Again, they may not like it. They may not like your story, but at least you've explained to them how you got there, and you're ready to admit mistake when you make a mistake, because you will make a mistake. That just happens, and it happens to all of us, and admit it and move forward.
And they might the more open you are, the more they can see you as a human being.
Absolutely.
And we can forgive people their mistakes. This happens with public officials too. If a public official would just say, "Gosh, I was busy. This happened. My dog died, and I had to go off and do this, and I was just so upset I screwed up."
Yeah.
That actually works well. I mean, those of you who have done any public relations, the classic example of this is the extra strength Tylenol case. That extra strength Tylenol was going to be destroyed as a brand, but they came out with a strategy of being completely open and forthcoming with everything, and they survived a tainting challenge. It works for almost everything.
And I would say 9 times out of 10, the problem comes with the cover-up,
Yeah.
right? Whether it be, in a newsroom or in government. That's when the problems
in
come.
our raid,
Yeah.
there are civil cases going on, but the only criminal case is about the cover-up.
Is the cover-up. Yeah.
Yeah, and you both have also mentioned tonight that a lot of people are getting their news from social media, which can create a lot of problems if there's people that are sharing
They think they're
misinformation.
getting their news from
Yes.
social. They think they're getting what they think is news.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any advice for people to distinguish between like real journalists and potential people in the community to get accurate news?
Well, an established news organization that, prints and has something that doesn't air at late night on cable and isn't selling things and infomercials in the middle of it about you can buy Mr. Pillow or something, there are qualitative differences in news organizations. I can't say that there are good ones and there are bad ones. And the more you read of them, the more you consume of them, the more you'll start recognizing it yourself. I mean, listening to NPR helps you evaluate whether you should listen to the Lawrence Journal World or the Lawrence Times. Listen to a lot of different things. Read the New York Times, read the other things. The more you look at, when I was growing up, my grandfather, who didn't go past 8th grade, got the Kansas City Star, the Kansas City Times, which were separate papers, the Topeka Capital, the Wichita Eagle, and the Wichita Beacon, every day. 5 newspapers. And this is a guy who didn't have more than an 8th grade education. We've lost something there. That was part of what we considered our civic duty, was to keep informed. And it is our civic duty to keep informed. And I can't tell you what standards to use to evaluate good news from bad news, but the more of it you read, the more diversity of sources you read, it's going to become obvious to you that, hey, this guy's way out of step here.
Yeah, what I would ask, just as 95% of my membership is rural, is subscribe to your local paper. Most of you are probably looking at a weekly that for an entire year would be $60 or $70. Get a subscription.
Ours is only $50. Except for
right?
raising it.
And one thing I would also say, I did talk about social media, and that was an issue more of media literacy. People were not understanding that the articles they were reading, I've got it from Facebook. Well, you got it from the Eureka Herald that posted it on Facebook, who then it was shared, right? So.
And you got it from the first 2 paragraphs of the Eureka Herald story.
Right. But what we're facing nationally and involved in some lawsuits about is AI. And AI is creating a real disruption because here's the problem. Google is stealing content and putting it in their AI summary. And what we're finding is they're not compensating journalists for that. And people aren't clicking through, right? So then you only get the AI summary, and then the reader is not clicking through to the actual publication's website. So what I would ask is that, click through. AI right now is creating a real problem when it comes to the model of AI is essentially stealing content without compensation. Other countries, Canada just got their huge allotment from Google to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. It's still kind of tied up in the courts right now, but I can't imagine being a journalist who puts their heart and soul into something and is somewhat based upon if they're getting click-throughs and they are being, there's a speed bump now, right? So they're doing all the work and not being compensated accordingly. So that is a real problem that we are facing, is that don't just take the AI summary, click through. That's what you can do in the short term while we all fight it out in the courts and try to get compensation for that. But so when we talk about social media, I almost feel like that's my 2-year-old answer, because now it's truly an AI issue, and to be fairly compensated for that it's a real existential threat to especially the rural papers that have their content out there, don't have the technology to make sure it's not scraped. And then when it is scraped and put on Google, they're not compensated for it.
The technology to prevent it from being scraped doesn't exist.
It doesn't, yeah.
And it's not just the publications. Don't use Google Docs. All your stuff's being stolen.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's being stolen every time you turn around. Don't use the Google password saver. Avoid Google. And I will tell you want to try it, you can go look at our raid, and you can keep going through the AI, click down, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, and eventually you will get to places where the AI has hallucinated. It's talking about how Officer Thomas Enzi is still on the city police force. There never was an officer named Thomas Enzi on the Marion Police Force. In fact, there is no one named Thomas Enzi associated with the case. There was a Thomas and there was an Enzi. They're different people, and they weren't police officers. But it came up with that. I did an editorial for the newspaper. Remember when we had the solar eclipse, big solar eclipse? I had AI write a story of the solar eclipse in Marion, Kansas. I thought it was going to give me the tips on what time you should watch it and whatever it is. No, it came up and said that there was a street festival, and the merchants in town were selling all these different things, and the mayor said this and had direct quotes from him, and it just complete hallucination. And you don't know it. You won't know it until somebody will know it at some point. Those of you in college, your professor will know it when they give you an F on your assignment, there's a very strong likelihood of the AI having hallucinations. AI, even if it doesn't, all it is stealing the work of others. It's the Milli Vanilli of journalism. I mean, it's not, and even if it were that, it would be mediocre at best. It can't be better than average. So you want to get something that's mediocre and half the time's wrong and really is kind of immoral. That's what it is. But it's postmodern, which means that we make money off of not creating anything ourselves, but stealing something that somebody else creates.
Yep. But it just goes back to the importance of real journalism, right? There are opportunities here. And while some people, have a kind of a doom and gloom and think, oh my goodness, what is this going to do? We've been through this before as an industry. The internet came along, we gave our content away for free, figured out that was not a smart idea, right? But we've been through this before, and we're still around. And so when people ask me, they're like, what do you think is going to happen? I think we're going to have journalism forever. We can argue about what platform it's going to be on, right? Is it going to be an online only? Is it going to be a print? We can argue about that all day long, about what platform to use, what's better, because I'll tell you, it depends on what the community wants. There's no silver bullet. There's no silver bullet for the model, the business model. So we're all doing these things and these projects to truly, and hundreds of millions of dollars are being funneled into journalism. The Press Forward movement, $500 million. We're going to be meeting with them in 2 weeks to talk about how is public policy? How could we help? We know government money, especially right now, is inconsistent, right? And can be pulled at any time. But what public policy things can we put in to help support this industry? Because it is considered a public good, right? So talking about those things, it is an exciting industry to be in. There is always a challenge. There is always a fire to put out. And if you're like me, if you went to a desk job that everything was the same, it wouldn't be a good situation, right? But if you love a challenge, if you love being part of an industry that has stayed through the tests of time and will stay around forever, because we need good journalism. Like I said, what platform that's going to be on, we can argue about that all day long, but good journalism, there will always be a need for it. As long as there is a government, as long as there are people in their communities who want it, we will always be around.
And I will say, the Nixon resigns thing, I was editor of the Kansan when that came out. My father was a journalism student here in 1948, and in 1948 he was told that journalism wouldn't exist for much more than 10 more years.
No.
It was going to be replaced by facsimile. We would all have little fax machines in our houses, and they would spew out the news to us every day. So gloom and doom doesn't do that. But the big thing is, and this is one of the reasons why when I was telling everybody, when I was teaching at the University of Illinois, I'd tell everybody, get out, go work in student media, go get an internship, not because you're going to learn how to be a journalist better, but you're going to see that what you do changes things. You're going to have the ability to change something. And there are darn few jobs in this world that allow you to sort of have this palpable sense that I made this different. This would have been bad, or would have been this way, and because of what I did, it changed to a different outcome. That will drive you forward. You may not change the world. I may not be able to bring peace to the Middle East or world peace to Africa or solve the famines or anything else, but I may be able to solve a problem in Marion County, Kansas, and get people to deal with it. That feels good.
Yeah.
The foster care system in Kansas was completely overhauled due to a series that the Kansas City Star wrote. Another example is there was a police-involved shooting of a person in Topeka, and the Topeka Capital Journal and the Kansas Press Association went about changing the law because at the time, a police-involved shooting, the video could only be seen and viewed by the next of kin. The next of kin was a 5-year-old child. And the police would not allow the parents of the person who was shot to see it. We went, and the Topeka Capital Journal led the charge to change that law. So now in Kansas, it's not only it's next of kin, but if that child is underage, it's then, to the next, adult. Those are the kinds of things that, again, sometimes we do a really bad job of telling the stories that we do, but that is work that benefits the public as well as the publication. So like Eric said, meaningful change happens, and it happens every single day.
Okay. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think we're going to move into the Q&A portion of the evening now. I'm going to open it up to the audience to ask your questions. So please raise your hand if you have a question, and one of the student workers with a microphone will come over to you. And then just when you're asking your question, keep in mind to try to limit it to a couple sentences so we have time to get to everyone.
Oh, no, you're okay. Hi. First of all, just thank you so much for coming here and talking. I heard your story on KCUR, and it changed a lot of how I view journalism. So I just want to thank you first for reporting and talking about that. Public media is getting defunded right now. KCUR is one of those where they are no longer receiving government funding. What's the best way to support local journalism, like what you do and what KCUR does?
That's one of the challenges that the industry is facing, and those of you sitting out there may be the solution to this problem. I personally think that community foundations are going to own most of the newspapers, but there's problems with that. A lot of times the community foundations get greedy and don't like the rate of return on newspapers and whatever, and so it works some places. I mean, the BBC gets a direct tax in Britain, and if the government dared to think of cutting the BBC's money in the United Kingdom, the government would be thrown out before the BBC would be. So the CBC has a somewhat similar relationship in Canada. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR, PBS, and so on, have never really had that degree of strength here, and we certainly don't get anything really from the government. If we get anything from the government, it's for something they pay for. I mean, we sell it to them. We don't get a direct grant of any sort. Maybe we should, but we have to figure out a way to insulate it so that politicians can't control that. and also so that ideologues don't control it. A lot of problems with community-owned media have been that, oh, we're so worried about what's going on in El Salvador, and all we're going to write about is El Salvador, and there's plenty happening here in town. So I don't know the answer to that, but there needs to be, what used to happen was that there were people in communities who thought that their community needed news. And they were in other businesses, but they funded a newspaper. And you will find that most of the great newspapers around the country, that's how they got started. Even my own little weekly newspaper in Kansas, there were two towns that were fighting to be the county seat of Dickinson County, Abilene, and a town by the name of Detroit, not can be confused with Michigan. Detroit, Kansas is now like a wide spot in the road, but Detroit lost, and the people from Marion went up to Detroit and bribed the newspaper editor to come down to Marion because they needed a paper. That was in 1869. So it partly has to do with the community coming together and realizing it needs it. So I think that that's part of the answer and part of having a mission. I mean, it's like, how do towns have churches? Well, people in the town started them, you know? I mean, how do towns have Kiwanis clubs or Rotary clubs or other things? Is people in the town started them. And I think that's what we're going to have to get back to. The big problem, frankly, has been that a lot of newspapers had really expensive buildings, and a lot of investment firms thought, gee, we could buy these places and sell the buildings off, and that'll pay for all we spent on the newspaper, and then just let the newspaper go to pot. And they don't care about journalism. And that's a lot of what's happened recently. So we have to guard against that, but I don't know how you can prevent people from making money. All these papers that are for sale, I'm sure, you're not going to get me to sell this one to anybody other than somebody who's going to further it along. But I can't blame somebody. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sitting here as a retiree of the University of Illinois. You know, the state of Illinois has a ridiculously generous pension system. I also have a pension from the Milwaukee Journal. I also have Social Security. I make more now not working than I ever made while I was working. So why should I take a salary at the Marion County Record? But I understand that there are people that this is their livelihood, and they can't necessarily afford to do that. How we do it, I don't know. You know, Warren Buffett for a while ran the Omaha newspaper, and I thought that was a good sign, but he got out of it.
In short, quickly, find the publications most at risk, both broadcast and print, are the smallest. You know, KCUR, they're a wonderful member of ours, and, you know, I was talking to one of their program directors, and he said, I don't worry about us, I worry about those those radio stations in Southwest Kansas. So my advice to you is find a small publication you like and you want to support, and support them. They're going to have the hardest time. That's who I'm worried about the most. I'm worried about the smallest publications, the smallest radio stations, the smallest TV stations. Those are the ones that sometimes are the canary in the coal mine. And that's who I worry about in Kansas. So that's what I would suggest.
And there are great organizations. You know, the Kansas Reflector is a great organization. Yep. But it's 4 or 5 people in Topeka. They can't cover 105 counties. I mean, there's no way they can cover everything. And even when we start talking about KCUR or KANU and the whole network of this, it's now a network. There isn't necessarily a, you know, time was, those of you from Wichita, the Wichita Hutchinson Market, and they used to have reporters in Great Bend and Garden City and Dodge City and Oberlin and McCook, and they don't have those anymore. They're all sitting in Wichita, and you can't cover the news by Zoom. I mean, you couldn't do class. I mean, you guys took classes in Zoom. They sucked. You can't cover the news by Zoom. You can't, you know, it's just not. You have to be there. You have to be part of the community. And we need to get back to the point where that's possible.
And students are doing amazing journalism. You have a newspaper run by students covering Eudora, the Eudora Times. Perfect example of something you can support. They are doing great work in Eudora. They would love to be full-time year-round, but they can't do that because of funds. That is a perfect example of how to support something hyper-local that is done by your fellow students. And so that is something that, you know, if I were a student here, I would throw my full support behind, because they are doing such good work. That newspaper doesn't have a dedicated publication except for the Eudora Times. And we're seeing great leadership among student journalists. There is a network now across the nation where you guys are filling in gaps, and it's so important. The State House Reporting Bureau that we help sponsor every year, that covers, that is free content for our members that gives students, experience at the State House, gets them in the State House, figuring out how things work. And in fact, there's a couple here tonight that were in that class that did such good work that normally would not have been done. We can't cover everything. Like you said, there's 4 or 5 people. There's maybe 10 people in our State House reporting crew. Used to be 30 in the State House. So what we're seeing, things, we need more eyes, not less.
You don't even need to go to Topeka or Eudora. You can join the University Daily Kansan.
There you go. Yep.
And it needs staff. When I was editor of the Kansan, actually when I was campus editor, we had a severe newsprint shortage. We couldn't print more than 8 pages of the paper. And we threw away ads because we had that much news. Because I had, at that time, 78 reporters, none of whom got paid. This is back in the ancient day. We trudged 10 miles through the snow, uphill both ways to go to school. But I had 78 reporters, and we couldn't fit their stuff into the paper. But we did good stuff. We ran a story that got 2 members of the faculty of this university sent to prison. We ran lots of interesting stories, made national headlines. You can do things with numbers, help you. So if you think, well, the Kansan doesn't do that much, go fix it. Go fix it. Get more of you down there. Give them more, and then they're probably more likely to be able to do more. Everything. You can do your own newspaper these days. It's easy to start one. You don't have to go out and buy presses. We don't own presses. Nobody owns presses anymore except Cherry Road, and they have it in Hutchinson. But you can be your own organization, but look close to home. I mean, like I say, you don't have to leave campus to find an opportunity to participate in journalism.
Yeah. I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions. Is there any other? I can go to you.
Hey, I know that you just encourage people to be student journalists on campus. Now, what words of encouragement would you have for people who have chosen to be leaders on campus to create their own platform or publication? You never know what detours they might run into on campus. How would, from time management, resources, and just the simple fact of saving your career that you're about to start, would you have any advice on navigating those nuances?
I wish I did. When I was editor of the Kansan, we got audited by the state, and we were required to put down how many hours we worked on and what our pay was, because like 5 or 6 people got paid. I got $600 a semester to be the editor and $400 a semester to be the campus editor, and they want to know how many hours a week we worked, and we lost track at about 86 or 90 hours. Now, we had to be a full-time student, too. So time management is a terrible problem. It will always be a problem. You have to be crazy devoted, and if you are, you'll figure out a way to do it. Personally, my way of figuring out to do it was I knew at some point I was going to do these things, and so I took overloads a lot of other semesters and then pulled out. I was also at that time in the marching band, which is another sinkhole of time, and I left the marching band the semester that I was editor of the Kansan because I just couldn't do it anymore. But I did it for the 3 other falls. I am always worried about organizations, though, that have a stated goal producing a publication and whether it's really telling the truth or the organization's version of the truth. So I don't know. I mean, there are some advocacy groups that I worry a little bit about their their house organs, and I don't know what groups you're talking about here, but I would rather see us have an objective, neutral organization that is just, it's not pushing anything, it's just pushing facts. And I know that's difficult, and it's a challenge, particularly for groups that are in some ways marginalized. One of the really interesting things about the problems of journalism is that it has greatly increased the diversity of the people entering the field, because a lot of the people of diverse backgrounds have stories that they are dying to tell, that they want to get out, and they are like I say, they don't care that it's going to be a time management problem. It's important enough to get it done that they're just going to go do it, and to a certain extent, it takes that in journalism. So the good thing is that that's going to make journalism better, I think.
Absolutely, and there's money, like I said before, $500 million being infused, especially into new publications. So while there are challenges, and I think we laid out a lot of them here, I don't want you to think that it's not possible, because it is. And if I were to start a new publication, I would do it today, and I would think there's really no better time, because you guys can be part of that movement to restore trust, right? There's an importance, even in the last few weeks, especially with the defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Everyone, like I said, this is not a partisan issue. This is oh my gosh, what's going to happen, right? What is happening here? I think there's no more exciting time, but you do have to be driven by purpose, because you're not going to make $1 million, but we do have millionaires among our membership that have made good money and are reinvesting in new models.
You also have to be a person who thinks that challenges are also opportunities.
Yes, that's it. That's what keeps us here every day.
Think about it. It happens all around you here. You know, if challenges weren't opportunities, the KU football team would have given up years ago. The basketball team might have given up after this season. So a challenge gives you an opportunity to be part of the solution.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you ever need anything, call us.
Yeah, well, I think that was the last question that we're going to have time for this evening. So could we give our guests another round of applause? And I just want to thank you all again for attending this evening. Don't forget about our first SAB meeting. That'll be on September 9th right here at the Dole Institute at 5:30. We're going to get to hear a little bit more from our student workers about some important announcements throughout the semester, and get an exclusive tour of the Dole Congressional Archives, which is one of the largest congressional archives in the United States. And if you enjoyed tonight's program, you won't want to miss the program Church and State event on September 4th at 7 p.m. with former Washington editor of the Wall Street Journal, Jerry Seib, and KU alum. And we're going to discuss the influence of Catholic thought on the political arena. And there's going to be a pre-event reception with Jerry and the other guests. So look out in the SAB newsletter for signups there if that's something that you'd be interested in. And I know what you're all here waiting for, the Dole Whip that'll be right outside. So please, just after we finish up here, you feel free to line up outside to get the Dole Whip. So thank you all for attending tonight.